The suitcase hit the front porch before I did. My wife threw it through the open doorway so hard that one of the wheels snapped off. A blue shirt spilled onto the wet concrete, followed by my old pair of work boots. "Take your things and go," Sarah said. I stared at her. Rainwater ran down my face, but I barely felt it. "Sarah, where am I supposed to go?" She folded her arms. "Anywhere. Just not here." Behind her, our 8-year-old daughter, Emily, stood halfway down the stairs, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Mommy," she whispered, "Daddy can stay." Sarah didn't even look at her. "Your father has made his choice." I looked at my wife, confused. "My choice?" She laughed bitterly. "For 5 years, I've watched you pretend everything is fine. You come home in the same cheap jacket. You drive that old car. You tell me you're working hard, but somehow we're always struggling. I've never lied to you. You didn't have to." Her voice cracked with anger. "You're broke, Michael. Completely broke. And I'm tired of pretending that's noble." I looked at Emily. She was crying silently. That was the moment my heart broke, not when my wife threw me out, but when my little girl ran down the stairs and wrapped both arms around my waist. "Daddy, don't leave." I knelt and held her tightly. "I'll never leave you." Sarah turned away. "That's enough drama." I picked up my broken suitcase. And I walked into the rain. What Sarah didn't know was that I wasn't broke. Not even close. I was the wealthiest man in the world. And I had spent the last 7 years making sure nobody knew. My name was Michael Reynolds. To Sarah, I was an ordinary financial consultant who worked long hours and somehow never seemed to have enough money. To everyone else, I was the anonymous owner of Reynolds Global, a company whose investments stretched across technology, energy, transportation, real estate, and dozens of other industries. The company was worth hundreds of billions. But almost nobody knew I owned it. I had inherited the original company from my grandfather with one condition. I had to live without the family fortune for 5 years before taking complete control. My grandfather believed money could destroy a person's ability to understand ordinary people. So I lived quietly. I drove an old sedan. I rented a modest office. I wore inexpensive clothes. And I never told Sarah. At first, it was supposed to be temporary. Then I fell in love with her. I thought she loved me too. I thought our life was real because she believed I was just Michael. I was wrong. That first night, I slept in my office. The security guard found me sitting on the floor at 2 in the morning. "Mr. Reynolds." I looked up. "I'm fine, David." He glanced at my suitcase. "You don't look fine." I smiled weakly. My wife kicked me out. David sat beside me. He didn't ask how much money I had. He didn't ask why. He simply handed me half of his sandwich. "It's all I have until payday." I stared at him. "David, you need that." He shrugged. "I can eat less tomorrow." That tiny act of kindness hurt more than anything Sarah had said. Because David had given me something money couldn't buy. Humanity. The next morning, I called my attorney. "Activate everything." "Everything, sir?" "Yes." There was silence. Then he said quietly, "Understood." Within hours, my private accounts were unlocked. My legal ownership of Reynolds Global was finalized. The world learned that the anonymous billionaire behind one of America's largest private investment empires was finally taking control. News channels exploded. Newspapers printed my photograph. Business magazines called me the richest man alive. But I didn't celebrate. I went straight to Emily's school. She ran into my arms the moment she saw me. "Daddy." I held her tightly. "Are you okay?" She nodded against my chest. "Mom said you don't have money." I closed my eyes. "Your mom was angry." "Are you poor?" I smiled. "No, sweetheart. She looked up. Then why did you sleep at work? I laughed softly through the tears. Because sometimes grown-ups make very bad decisions. She hugged me again. I still love you. That sentence changed everything. I could have bought anything. A mansion. A private island. A fleet of cars. But none of those things compared to one little girl saying, I still love you. That afternoon, I did something unexpected. I didn't buy a mansion. I didn't purchase a new car. I went back to the neighborhood where I had grown up. There was a small community center there that my grandfather had once helped build. It was falling apart. The roof leaked. The kitchen was barely functional. Children came there after school because their parents couldn't afford childcare. I walked inside and saw David sitting at a table. He looked shocked. Mr. Reynolds. I smiled. Call me Michael. He stood. What are you doing here? I looked around. I'm fixing this place. For how much? All of it. He shook his head. You don't have to. I know. I looked at the children playing nearby. I want to. Over the next 6 months, the center was transformed. We added classrooms, computers, a library, a food pantry, medical services, and scholarships. But I didn't put my name on anything. I wanted the children to know they were worth helping. Not because a billionaire had decided to save them, but because people were supposed to help people. Then one evening, I received a call. Michael, my attorney said, Sarah wants to see you. I almost said no. Then he added, it's about Emily. I went. Sarah was sitting alone in a restaurant. She looked different. Tired. Smaller somehow. She stood when I entered. Michael. I sat across from her. What happened? She swallowed. I found out who you are. I said nothing. She looked down. You're the owner of Reynolds Global. Yes. The richest man in the world. I suppose that's what the newspapers say. Her eyes filled with tears. Why didn't you tell me? I looked at her for a long moment. Because I wanted to know if you loved me without the money. She began crying. I was scared. Of what? Being poor. I nodded. And now? She wiped her eyes. Now I'm scared that I lost the best man I ever had. I didn't answer. She reached across the table. I made a terrible mistake. Yes, I said gently. I was cruel. Yes. I threw you out. Yes. I hurt Emily. That one made me look away. Sarah whispered, can you forgive me? I thought about the rain. The broken suitcase. Emily crying on the stairs. David sharing his last sandwich. Finally, I said, I can forgive you. Her face softened. But forgiveness doesn't always mean going back. She nodded slowly. I understand. I stood. Before leaving, I placed an envelope on the table. Sarah stared at it. What is this? Emily's education fund. She pushed it back. No. I shook my head. This isn't for you. She looked at me. It's for our daughter. She began crying again. I don't deserve your kindness. No, I said softly. But Emily deserves a good future. A year later, Emily stood on a stage at the community center. She was holding a certificate for the first scholarship program we'd created. Children filled the room. Parents applauded. David stood in the back, smiling proudly. Emily walked over to me afterward. Daddy. Yes. Are you still the richest man in the world? I laughed. Probably. She thought for a second. Then can we buy something? Anything. She pointed toward a little boy sitting alone near the doorway. Can we buy him dinner? I looked at the boy. Then at my daughter. My throat tightened. I knelt beside her. We don't need to buy kindness, sweetheart. I took her hand. We just give it. She smiled. And together, we walked toward the boy. That night, I finally understood what my grandfather had tried to teach me. Being the richest man in the world had nothing to do with the number in my bank account. The real wealth was having someone hold your hand when you're hurting, sharing half a sandwich when you have only one, forgiving someone who doesn't deserve it, and having a little girl look at you after everything has fallen apart and say, "I still love you." I had lost a wife that rainy night, but I had gained something far more valuable. I had discovered that kindness could survive rejection, that love could exist without money, and that sometimes the greatest fortune a person can have isn't what they own. It's what they are willing to give away.